It all started the day I lost my job at least. I was halfway through an exhausting shift at the coffee shop when the boss pulled me aside.
No warning, just a terse, we need to talk. I knew it was coming. I had seen the signs.
I hadn't been making the numbers, and the customers were growing restless. But nothing could prepare me for the moment when I was handed a small, cardboard box with my name scrawled across it. "Everything you need to pack up is in there," the manager said, her eyes avoiding mine. I stood there, numb.
How had I ended up here?
Just a few weeks ago, I had been on top of the world. I had my whole life figured out, or so I thought. But now, my job was gone, my savings were shrinking, and I was staring down the barrel of something even worse than financial ruin, the humiliation of failure. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a lifeline in the chaos.
It was a message from Nick, my on-again off-again boyfriend. "We need to talk."
His words, simple and straight to the point.
I should have ignored it. I should have.
But my hands were shaking, and I had nothing to lose. I called him back, my breath catching in my throat as I waited for the line to pick up.
"Hey, are you alright?"
I asked, trying to sound casual even though my heart was racing.
He didn't answer right away.
When he did, it was like a punch to the gut.
"I've been seeing someone else."
His words were cold, matter-of-fact, like he was telling me the weather report. The world seemed to tilt on its axis, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe.
"Why are you telling me this now?"
I demanded, my voice cracking despite my attempts to hold it together.
"I just wanted you to know," he replied. "I thought we should end it. You deserve someone better."
That's when it hit me. Nick wasn't just leaving me, he was leaving me for someone else.
And the worst part?
I had suspected something for weeks but had ignored all the signs.
The late-night texts, the missed calls,
his sudden interest in needing space.
I told him to go to hell. I told him I didn't need his pity. But in truth, I felt like I was losing everything. I spent the next few days spiraling, bouncing between anger, sorrow, and disbelief.
I moved out of the coffee shop's shared apartment, no longer able to stomach the place where my failures had stacked up. I crashed at a friend's house and tried to hide from the world for a while. It was in this void, in that haze of uncertainty, that I met her.
Her name was Charlie.
She was a whirlwind of energy, exhilarating, unpredictable, and completely captivating. She showed up at my favorite bar one night, flashing a smile that felt like a secret.
No, not just a secret, like a dare. Like she knew something I didn't.
She was standing at the jukebox, flipping through songs, when she caught my eye. "You look like someone who needs a drink," she said, sliding into the seat next to me.
I didn't have the energy for small talk, but I couldn't look away. "I'm not really in the mood," I muttered, barely keeping it together. Charlie didn't seem to care about my reluctance. "Trust me, you'll feel better after one."
She winked and ordered 2 shots of tequila, pushing one toward me. "On the house," she said.
"After all, you look like you could use some help."
I could tell she wasn't from around here. Her accent was soft, almost musical, with a hint of mystery behind it.
We spent the next few hours talking about everything and nothing at all. She made me laugh, even when I didn't want to. I found myself telling her things I hadn't told anyone.
My failed relationships, my dead-end job, my total inability to get anything right. By the end of the night, I was drunk and elated, caught in a haze that wasn't just alcohol. It was the feeling of being alive again, of being seen for the first time in ages.
Charlie promised to call me the next day.
She had a project in mind for me, something that could change everything.
I didn't know what she meant. I didn't care. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I mattered.
The next morning came with a pounding headache and a sinking feeling in my stomach. I had woken up in a strange apartment, Charlie's apartment to be exact. It was cluttered but cozy, with a messy kitchen and unwashed dishes piled up in the sink. The sunlight filtered through the curtains, casting lazy rays across the living room, but none of that seemed to matter. My thoughts were consumed by what had happened the night before.
I checked my phone. A message from Charlie. "Good morning, beautiful. I know you're probably feeling rough, but don't worry, it'll be worth it. Call me when you're up. We've got work to do." Work to do? What the hell was she talking about?
I had no idea what she meant by that, but the mystery intrigued me. I'd learned long ago that when people like Charlie entered your life, it was best to hold on tight and see where the ride took you. So I called her back. "Hey, you," I said, still groggy.
"Hey,"
she replied, her voice upbeat as always.
"So, I have a proposition for you. We're going to take a little trip today."
I'm not going to say much now, but trust me, it's going to be exactly what you need.
Pack light and meet me in an hour. I didn't ask any more questions.
I'd learned to trust Charlie in that strange, reckless way that some people inspire, without hesitation, without fear. I quickly threw together a bag with the essentials and left her apartment, my heart racing with curiosity. I arrived at a small, nondescript parking lot, the kind that was mostly empty except for a single beat-up van parked at the far end. Charlie was already standing there, leaning against the van, a wide grin on her face. She looked every bit the part of someone who was always one step ahead. "This is it," she said, her eyes gleaming. "Are you ready for the first step toward the rest of your life?" The van's door swung open, revealing a man inside, his face half obscured by a baseball cap. He didn't speak, but his presence was enough to make my heart skip a beat. There was something about him that felt dangerous, like a force of nature, ready to be unleashed. "Don't worry," Charlie said, sensing my unease. "He's cool. His name's Vincent. You two are going to get along just fine." We climbed into the van together, and without another word, we were off. The route Charlie drove was long and winding, taking us out of the city and into unfamiliar terrain. The further we went, the more my sense of reality felt warped. The trees were dense, and the roads became more isolated. I had no idea where we were headed, and yet, I felt strangely at peace with it. It was only after an hour of driving that Charlie finally spoke again. "There's a business opportunity waiting for you, and it's going to change everything." I raised an eyebrow. "What kind of business?" Charlie's eyes sparkled. "An underground one. A little risky, but lucrative as hell. I know you're not afraid of taking chances. You're good at it." That word again, business. My mind swirled with possibilities, but the truth was, I had no clue what she was getting at. The only thing I did know was that this mysterious life she was offering me was a far cry from the reality I'd been stuck in. Finally, the van slowed to a stop in front of an abandoned warehouse. I felt a shiver run down my spine as I took in the scene. The building was old, industrial, something straight out of a crime thriller. Charlie turned to me with a grin. "Welcome to the next chapter. Your next step is inside." Inside, the air was thick with tension. The space was dimly lit, the echo of our footsteps reverberating off the walls. Vincent led us through the labyrinth of hallways until we arrived at a small room in the back. The door creaked as it opened. Inside was a large table covered in papers, blueprints, and a single laptop. At the head of the table sat a man I didn't recognize. He was older, mid-40s, with sharp features and eyes that looked like they could see straight through me. "Charlie," the man said, his voice low and commanding. "You brought her." Charlie nodded, her usual smile replaced with something more serious. "This is Kara. She's ready to join us." The man, let's call him Adrian, eyed me up and down, sizing me up as if I were a piece of property to be inspected. "Let's see what you've got," he muttered, almost as if to himself. He slid a file toward me, one that I immediately recognized as my own. It was filled with personal information, my work history, my bank details, everything. A cold chill washed over me as I stared at the contents. How the hell did he get all of this? "I know what you're thinking," Adrian said, his voice drawing me back to the present, "but this isn't about control. It's about power. Power to do what you want, when you want. You've been wasting your time, Kara. We're here to help you change that." I looked at Charlie, trying to make sense of it all, but she was no longer smiling. She was watching me intently, her expression unreadable. "Do you want this, Kara?" Adrian pressed. "Because once you step in, there's no going back." I took a deep breath, every fiber of my being telling me to run, to get out of there before it was too late. But something in me, something I hadn't felt in years, was ready. Ready to take control. Ready to step into a world where the rules didn't apply. "Yes," I said, my voice steady. "I'm in." As I shook Adrian's hand, sealing my fate, I realized I had just signed up for something far more dangerous than I had ever imagined. The story had just begun, and there was no telling where this new life would lead. The next few days were a blur. I moved through my life like I was on autopilot, only half aware of the world around me. Everything felt different now. The air seemed heavier, the people I encountered felt distant, like I wasn't really part of their world anymore. I had chosen my path, and there was no going back. Adrian and Charlie had given me an assignment, my first test, so to speak. It was simple on the surface, but I knew better than to underestimate it. I was to retrieve something. A small package, a bit of sensitive data, locked away in a secured facility. Easy enough, right? I laughed bitterly to myself. The easy ones were always the trickiest. The plan was straightforward: get in, grab the file, and get out. Simple. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that nothing about this would be simple. I spent the day preparing, digging through old contacts to find any loose ends I could exploit. It's amazing how many people in my past had left an opening somewhere, whether they knew it or not. I didn't feel guilty. In this world, you either played the game, or you got eaten alive. As dusk fell, I found myself standing in front of a nondescript building on the outskirts of the city, its windows dark, the only light coming from a flickering street lamp in the distance. The place reeked of secrets. I wasn't alone. Vincent was waiting for me by the back door, his expression unreadable. He had been oddly quiet, but his presence was enough to make me feel like I was walking on a tightrope. I didn't trust him, but I couldn't deny that he was useful. "You sure you're ready?" he asked as I approached.
"Do I have a choice?"
I shot back, trying to mask the nerves creeping up my spine.
He didn't respond, just handed me a small, sleek device.
It looked like a cross between a phone and a keycard reader.
"This will get you in. If you screw this up, you're on your own."
"Noted," I muttered, shoving the device into my pocket.
We made our way inside.
The building was cold, sterile, too quiet. It didn't feel like a place meant for anything important, but I knew better. It was a front, an illusion.
And whatever was hidden inside was going to change everything.
I moved quickly, making my way through the maze of corridors, the eerie silence pressing in on me. The only sound was the faint clicking of my heels on the concrete floor and the occasional hum of a distant machine.
Then I heard something, a door opening, footsteps.
I froze, pressing myself against the wall, my heart pounding in my chest. "Shit," I muttered under my breath. I pulled out the device and swiped it over a nearby terminal. The door I was standing next to clicked open, and I slid inside just as the footsteps grew louder. Inside the room, the walls were lined with rows of secure cabinets, each one with a code pad. I could feel the sweat trickling down the back of my neck as I scanned the place, looking for what I had come for. And then I saw it, the file. It was sitting innocently on a table in the center of the room, like it was waiting for me. I approached it slowly, unsure if this was too easy.
But the reality was far more sinister than I realized.
As my fingers brushed against the file, I heard the door slam behind me. I spun around, only to be faced with two men. The same men I had seen with Adrian earlier. The men who had been watching me.
"What the hell is this?" one of them demanded.
His voice was rough, like it had been dragged through gravel.
I didn't say a word. I didn't have to.
I had already planned for this moment, already knew how to react.
"Drop the file," the other man ordered, pulling out a gun. "Now." For a moment, time seemed to freeze.
I could feel my heartbeat in my throat, pounding louder than any sound I had ever heard. Every instinct told me to run, but I couldn't.
I was cornered. Then I heard the voice again.
I said, "Drop it." I glanced at the file, then back at the men.
One of them was already stepping forward, ready to make a move. I didn't have much time.
"Fine," I said, my voice trembling despite my best efforts to stay calm.
"You want it? Come get it."
Before they could react, I swiped the file and darted toward the nearest exit. I could hear them behind me, their footsteps growing louder with every passing second.
I wasn't fast enough. A hand grabbed my arm, pulling me back. "Thought you could run," the man sneered. I twisted in his grip, desperate, but I couldn't break free.
The other man advanced on me, closing in, his gun now aimed directly at my chest.
This was it. I was done.
But then I heard it, a loud, deafening crash. The man holding me stumbled back, surprised. I turned just in time to see Charlie standing in the doorway, a crowbar in her hand, a wicked grin on her face. "I told you she was ready," she said coolly, stepping inside as if she owned the place. In an instant, the two men were on the ground, knocked out cold by Charlie's skillful use of the crowbar. I stood there, frozen in disbelief. "Get the hell out of here," Charlie said, tossing the crowbar aside like it was a mere toy.
"You've done your part."
I looked at her, my heart still racing.
"What the hell is going on, Charlie?"
"That's for me to know, and for you to find out," she said with a wink, already turning to leave. I followed her out, the file still clutched in my hand.
We didn't talk as we made our way back to the van.
All I could do was replay everything in my head, trying to make sense of it. I was in deeper than I had ever been, and there was no going back. By the time we reached the van, I was shaking, part fear, part adrenaline. The night air seemed to press in around us, thick and heavy. I couldn't decide if I was more terrified by the men I had just outrun, or by Charlie's sudden, brutal intervention. She didn't say a word as she started the engine, the only sound the hum of the van's motor and the faint buzz of the streetlights flickering overhead. I sat in silence beside her, clutching the file in my lap like it was a precious artifact, a symbol of the moment that had turned my entire life upside down. When we finally arrived at an abandoned warehouse on the edge of town, Charlie pulled the van to a stop and turned off the engine. She glanced at me, her expression unreadable. "You did good," she said, her voice low. "But this is just the beginning." I stepped out of the van, feeling like I was stepping into a different world. The warehouse loomed above me, dark and foreboding, like something out of a nightmare. But it was real. This was real, and I had just crossed a line I could never uncross. Charlie led me inside, her heels clicking against the concrete floor as we made our way through the cavernous building. The air was thick with dust, the faint scent of oil and metal hanging in the air. There were crates stacked haphazardly against the walls, and machinery that looked like it hadn't been used in years. At the far end of the room, a single desk sat under a dim light. Behind it sat Adrian, his sharp eyes gleaming as he watched us approach. He didn't say a word, but there was something in his gaze that made me feel exposed, like he could see right through me. "You got it," he said, his voice as cold as ice. I handed him the file, my hands trembling slightly. The moment it left my grip, I felt a strange emptiness wash over me, like I had just given away the last piece of myself. But I had no choice. I had made my decision. Adrian scanned the file quickly, his eyes narrowing as he flipped through the pages. I couldn't see what was inside, but from the way he handled it, I could tell it was something important, something dangerous. "This is exactly what we need," he muttered, almost to himself. "You're in, but remember, there's no turning back now." I swallowed hard. "What does that mean?" "It means you're part of the game now," he replied, his eyes flicking to Charlie, then back to me. "You'll do exactly what we say, when we say it. No questions, no hesitation. You'll be paid well, but you'll work hard for it." I nodded, though I wasn't sure what kind of work he was referring to. The ambiguity of it all made my skin crawl. I was in deeper than I had ever expected, and the only thing that kept me going was the strange, twisted thrill of it all. "We need you for something bigger now," Charlie chimed in, her voice like honey. "We've got a client with a problem, and you, Kara, are going to fix it." "Who is this client?" I asked, suddenly feeling a sharp sense of unease. "That's not for you to know yet," Adrian said, his tone final. "What you need to understand is that once you accept this job, your old life is over. The people you once trusted, the things you thought you knew about yourself, everything changes." I felt my stomach churn. "You're saying I'm not going to be the same person anymore?" "Exactly." Charlie's eyes were dark, intense. "You'll be better. You'll be stronger. But you'll also be something else, something you may not recognize. You've got a taste of the power, Kara, and once you've tasted it, there's no going back." The weight of her words settled in my chest, heavy and suffocating. Part of me wanted to run, to turn around and walk out the door without looking back. But the other part, the part that had been looking for something bigger, something more dangerous, was already too deep in it. Adrian stood up from his desk and walked toward me, his movements deliberate. "Here's the deal," he said, stopping just in front of me. "We're going to give you a task. A simple one to start. If you succeed, you'll prove yourself to us. If you fail, well, there are consequences. We don't like failure." I nodded, though the fear was building in my gut. "What's the task?" Adrian handed me a small envelope, its edges crisp and sharp. "Take this to a man named Marcus. He's in a hotel downtown. Deliver it, and get out. No questions asked." Simple. I didn't ask who Marcus was. I didn't care. All I knew was that this was the moment where it all shifted. My old life was gone, and this new one had already begun to consume me. When I arrived at the hotel, I felt the weight of the envelope in my pocket like a ticking time bomb. It was just a delivery, right? Nothing more. But nothing about this felt simple anymore. The hotel lobby was dim, quiet. The receptionist barely glanced at me as I walked by, and I headed straight for the elevator. As the doors closed, I could feel my pulse quicken. I didn't know what was waiting for me on the other side, but I knew one thing for sure: I was in over my head. When I reached Marcus's floor, I found his room without issue. I knocked twice before the door cracked open, revealing a tall, broad-shouldered man. He was dressed in a black suit, his expression unreadable. "You Kara?" he asked, his voice deep, the question hanging in the air. I nodded, pulling out the envelope and handing it to him. He didn't say anything at first, just took it and stared at me, sizing me up. "Make sure this gets back to Adrian. Don't screw it up," he said, closing the door before I could say anything else. I stood there for a moment, unsure of what to do next. Something about this encounter felt off, like I had just been a small piece in a much larger puzzle, one I wasn't yet ready to solve. But as I turned to leave, I felt a shift in the air, as though the room behind me had held more than just a simple delivery. It was the first time I realized that Adrian's words had been more than just a warning. They had been a promise. And now, there was no turning back. The days that followed felt like I was living in a world that didn't quite make sense. I was caught in a web of my own making, and every step forward seemed to bring me closer to a point of no return. Adrian's cryptic warnings echoed in my mind as I moved through my tasks: simple jobs, deliveries, things that didn't feel important at first, but with each one, I found myself sinking deeper. The envelope I delivered to Marcus was only the beginning. What had seemed like a minor task now felt like a key piece of a puzzle I wasn't sure I was ready to solve. But no matter how much I tried to deny it, I was part of something much bigger, something dangerous. Charlie had been keeping an eye on me, checking in at odd times, always with that knowing smile. She didn't ask questions, she just gave orders. I did what I was told, knowing full well that if I didn't, the consequences would be worse than anything I could imagine. But then came the moment I had been dreading, the moment that would finally force me to confront the truth. It was a Thursday when Adrian called me. I had just gotten home from my shift at the coffee shop, and the phone buzzed on the counter. I didn't even hesitate. I had known this call was coming. "Come to the warehouse now," Adrian said, his voice low and urgent. I grabbed my jacket and left without a second thought, my heart pounding in my chest. The ride to the warehouse felt longer than usual. The city around me blurred, and I was left alone with my thoughts. What had I gotten myself into? When I arrived, the place was darker than I remembered, and for a moment, I hesitated in the doorway. But then I saw Charlie, standing next to Adrian, her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. "Good, you're here," Adrian said, his voice cutting through the silence. He gestured for me to come inside. "We have a problem." A chill ran down my spine. "What kind of problem?" Charlie didn't answer, but the way she was looking at me made my stomach drop. I had been doing the work, following the rules, but something was off. I could feel it. Adrian handed me a folder, thick with papers. I glanced at it, trying to process what I was seeing. "We've been compromised," he said flatly. "Someone's been digging into our operations, and we think you know who it is." The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. "Who?" I asked, my voice trembling, but Adrian didn't answer. Instead, he pulled up a chair and sat down across from me. "This," he said, pointing to the file, "is our insurance. You've done well so far, but now it's time for you to prove your loyalty. This isn't just about delivering files or making a quick buck anymore. This is about survival." I looked at the folder in my hands, dread creeping up my throat. "What do you want me to do with it?" Adrian's eyes gleamed. "Everything's in there. People's names, connections, places they've been. It's all there. We need you to get to the one person who can undo everything we've worked for. We need you to take them out." My heart skipped a beat. "You want me to kill someone?" Charlie spoke for the first time, her voice soft but firm. "We wouldn't ask you if you weren't capable. You've been moving in the right circles. You've built the trust. Now you finish the job." I stood there, holding the folder, my hands shaking. It felt like the walls were closing in around me. This was the point of no return. I had been running on adrenaline, doing what I was told, but now I was asked to make a choice that would define everything. "I'm not a killer," I said, my voice low, a shaky defiance in my tone. Adrian leaned forward, his face hard. "You're not just a killer, Kara. You're someone who makes things happen. You've been given a choice: stay in the game or walk away. But make no mistake, if you walk away now, you'll be a target. The people you've been working with will come after you. You can't escape this." The words hit me like a ton of bricks. He was right. There was no escaping this life anymore. I left the warehouse that night with the folder in my hands and the weight of Adrian's words pressing down on me. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. My mind raced, torn between two choices, one that could destroy me and one that could set me free. By morning, I knew what I had to do. I called Charlie. "I'll do it," I said, my voice steady. "But there's one thing I want first." Charlie paused, then said, "Anything. I want to know the truth. About everything. Who's really behind this? Who Adrian works for? And what this is all for." Charlie's silence stretched on, and I could almost hear her weighing my words. Then she spoke, her voice colder than I had ever heard it. "You're asking for too much. I'm not asking for a choice. I'm asking for clarity. I want to know what I'm getting into." There was a long pause before she answered. "All right, meet me at the old storage facility at 2 p.m. I'll give you the answers you need. But after that, you're all in. No more questions." At 2 p.m., I arrived at the storage facility, my heart hammering in my chest. The place was abandoned, its rusted doors barely hanging on their hinges. I stepped inside, scanning the shadows for any sign of movement. Then I saw her. Charlie was standing by the back wall, her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. She nodded toward the corner, where a small table sat with an old laptop and a few scattered papers. "This is everything," she said. "The truth, the origins of the organization, Adrian's role, and what we've been working toward." I sat down, my fingers trembling as I opened the laptop and scanned the documents on the screen. And then it hit me. The organization wasn't just some underground group, it was part of something much bigger, something that spanned countries, industries, and governments. They weren't just making money, they were changing the rules of the game entirely. And I was a pawn. Charlie watched me closely, her eyes steady as I took it all in. "You still want to walk away?" she asked, her voice almost gentle. I swallowed hard. I had no choice. There was no turning back. But now, I understood the game I was playing. And the stakes.